All right,
Yeah, we did
let's
have a
go.
nice one hooked up the other day with sweet little Willie on the radio as we were cranking it in. Just by the way.
Is that right?
All right, let's see.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
should be live. Let me get the link, and then we'll send the link out. We can also. I want to touch on Gable real quick because I don't think people realize what's actually happening. That he's being cut, but he's gonna be signed to their practice squad. And the intention was cut him, put him on the practice squad. He'll make $225,000 this year just to develop and then try to make a team next year. But still, he'll get the league minimum of $12,000
Yeah.
a game this year, which is $225,000. All right, I just
Yeah.
tweeted out. We're
as
live.
as as compared to the Iowa City minimum of $500,000 for a semester.
That's what somebody said. Somebody said if only he still had a year of college eligibility left, he could double what he can make in the NFL this year at a league minimum.
They offered him 500.
Correct.
All right, Willie, where do you want to start? We're live. Retweet it out.
I'll retweet it. This is sort of an impromptu show, and
From the greatest chat in wrestling.
yeah. So me, Beshada,
Yes. No question about it.
Fellers, and Bash are all on a text thread, and separately, or no, it was on that text thread. Fellers said this morning. It's so funny because I was going back and forth on the message boards with
Shocker.
on the Hawkeye report last night, and they're saying the guys on the Hawkeye report are saying you media types only talk about it because it's Iowa. You didn't say nothing about Penn State. You didn't say nothing about Truex. You didn't say nothing about Nagel. You didn't say nothing about Wyatt Hendrickson, which, first of all, categorically false. We talked about Nagel. We talked about Truex. We talked about Wyatt Hendrickson. We talked about Wyatt Hendrickson for a month. Number one. Number two, they are materially different situations. I mean, they can't figure out why it's not the same thing. It's not apples to apples. So, but they're saying, oh, Willie, you only talk about it. Bash only talks about it. FRL only talks about it because it's Iowa. It's Iowa. And we're the media darlings or the media villains or whatever you want to say. And I said, you guys just can't figure it out. You can't figure out there's differences here. And lo and behold, wake up this morning, text thread with you guys, and what does Fellers say? You're only talking about it because Iowa runs the news cycle. No, that's not why everybody's talking about it. It has nothing to do with it being Iowa and everything to do with unprecedented offers and unprecedented time.
And I think a big thing, too, is it's not just the news around guys transferring in. It's also the last 24 hours has been about the guys transferring out. That's where part of the news is also, it's not just Buchanan or Teamer, Parco, the guys they're getting. We talked about every single transfer in Oklahoma State because Don brought up right away, like people are forgetting Oklahoma State has just as many, if not more, transfers than Iowa. What you're also seeing at Iowa is a mass exit that you don't typically see, especially from a program of that caliber. You're seeing Zach Glazier transfer out. You're seeing both the Seabrook brothers transferring out. You're seeing guys transfer out, Aiden Riggins to Iowa State. And that's a large part of also what's being discussed. It's not just, oh, Iowa got a transfer. Yes, that's huge news. Buchanan's a NCAA runner-up. Teamer, NCAA runner-up. When those guys go somewhere, it's massive news regardless of where they're going.
Yeah, I mean, right, there's two things. One, it's that it's very well known that Iowa, in some sort of the proxy for Iowa, has been reaching out to guys that had no intention of transferring. That's the material difference, right? Nagel went in the portal. He went to Penn State. Truex went in the portal. He went to Penn State. Hendrickson went in the portal. He went to Okie State. We have heard time and time again that Iowa is trying to get this guy who's not in the portal, who never said he wanted to transfer. I was trying to get this guy who's not in the portal, who never said he wanted to transfer. I mean, they reached out to the Willets. They reached out to Austin O'Connor. These guys had no designs of transferring. This is an unprecedented time, an unprecedented situations. It is massively different than a guy going in the portal and ending up somewhere else. So that's number one. Number two, when Truex went to Penn State, when Nagel went to Penn State, when Hendrickson went to Okie State, Connor Doucette didn't transfer. There wasn't a mass exodus. There weren't rumors of the culture there being disenfranchised, but there is now. There is with this situation. And so, what don't you get about this not being the same thing?
Well, a lot of people are asking.
I think what we're kind of seeing here, right? Just from an overall perspective, and Bash, you and I talked about this a couple minutes ago. You know, what we're seeing here is after a couple of years of this NIL ruling from the Supreme Court, right? We're actually seeing the problems that NIL and this type of money in college athletics kind of creates amongst kids. On the one hand, on the other hand, I think, you know, while yes, it's creating controversy as it should. Flip side of it is that for years people have been saying these college kids, myself included, by the way, these college kids work really hard. This is really their pinnacle, because the reality in the U.S. is, you know, we're super fans, right? We watch freestyle. We don't really watch Greco, but we sort of talk about it to a limited degree. But at the end of the day, you know, we're into the, of course, we're into the Olympic styles. When, you know, the casual fan, you know, the pinnacle is an NCAA wrestling title, and that's sort of their professional career, is their 4-year college career. So these kids are now actually going out cashing tickets, and, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, that Supreme Court ruling came in, and I think, you know, you've seen the development. And I use that not in a good way, but you've seen the development of what that ruling is actually doing, and yeah, it potentially is putting programs in complete shambles. I'll say on the flip side of it, the train just keeps rolling in State College, because not a lot of controversy coming out of there, and they just continue to get, you know, the young kids coming out of high school. You don't hear about, you know, $500,000 payments. And yeah, they got Truex, yeah, they got Nagel, but I think, Willie, I think you're correct to point out, those were voluntary transfers when that was done. Nobody went out and said, hey, come here and I'll pay you $500,000 for a semester, right? But that train just keeps on rolling, and it seems as if, you know, the Penn State Brain Trust has almost broken the college sports, where, I mean, donors are putting millions of dollars. Let's be realistic. And this isn't really an Oklahoma State issue, but it's the same thing. Like, Oklahoma State spent a bundle on a coaching staff. Not the NIL transfers. Those weren't David's transfers. They came in before him. And people are sort of trying to pin that on, well, look, Taylor's doing the same thing. No, he's not. And that's the exact opposite, as a matter of fact. You know, he hasn't gone out and gone after anybody. They went out and hired the best coaching staff they could possibly get, but spent an obscene amount of money doing it in order to try and catch the juggernaut. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next few years. Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I know for a fact, I don't know if I should say it, but I will say it. I know for a fact that Oklahoma State could have had some other guys, but was reluctant to offer that big amount of money. They don't want to set that precedent.
Yeah.
And even if you listen through the grapevine, and you hear that the word is that the previous staff had agreements with some of these guys, and when David learned of what the amounts were, he was like, he didn't like it too much. It didn't sit great with him, right? He's like, that's not how I would operate. And so, I mean, yeah, Oklahoma State has a lot of transfers on their roster, but
And even Wyatt Hendrickson, who he was already, when he was on the podcast announcing that he was transferring, he had said, he's like, he grew up idolizing guys like Dake and Taylor. And Taylor going there, that was a huge factor, I'm sure, in him signing there. Oklahoma State was already one of the final 3 schools. But if you look at even where Taylor has spent money already, it's bringing in Roman Bravo Young. It's already wanting to, and now look what he's doing with the lightweight side, where you've got Kennedy, you've got Gilman, you've got Fix, you've got Roman now. That's where, so yeah, a lot of Oklahoma State's transfers came in earlier in the offseason.
And
David saw those numbers and said, "Damn, I should have asked for $2 million a year, not one." But I think, all joking aside, I think, but in truth of fact, I mean, look at the culture that Taylor comes from. Like, I don't know, I don't want to make this a Kale love session, but when all is said and done, like, Kale wouldn't pay that kind of money for those guys. He wouldn't do it. And I think David comes from that exact culture, as does Jimmy, as does Thomas. Those guys want to build a program around what they offer the athletes, not necessarily what the donors have to offer the athletes. At least, again, I don't know that, but I'm assuming that that's the case.
And again, part of this story, there's a lot of parts of the Iowa story currently happening. The offers, and part of why we're talking so much about this isn't just that it's Iowa, isn't just that it's guys that weren't. We are like finding out sort of in real time something that doesn't just have to do with Iowa. It has to do with the rules as we understand it. We kind of learned in real time that you don't have to go into the portal. It all like just occurred to us, and we found out, even coaches, that we were all under the impression that to transfer, this portal was implemented as a tool to transfer. You enter your name in the transfer portal during the portal window, and then you talk to coaches and you figure something out and you go to the university that you want to. Well, we're figuring out that is a tool, but that is not the rule. You can show up anywhere. Now, you're not supposed to be talking to other teams if you're not in the portal, but if Tom Brand's buddy wants to call, if a wrestler wants to call it, right? If a wrestler from Penn State wants to call a guy from Chattanooga and say, "Hey, why don't you come up here?" That's legal. But the main point being, you can show up. I could be at Pitt and say, "You know what? I think I want to go to Clarion." Apply to Clarion. Show up on Clarion's campus. And as long as my progress to degree, as long as enough credits transfer that maintains my progress to degree, I'm in the clear. I don't have to sit. I don't have to do, I get no penalties. And so that's a huge part of this story. It's not just Iowa. It's not just this situation. It's that, like, we were smacked over the head with the portal thing for years, 2 years, thinking it was the way, all to find out right now in this moment, like, no, there's another avenue.
Well, that's why people are saying, like, how did Aiden Riggins just up and go to Iowa State?
I don't know anything about professional sports, so I don't know how this works. You guys follow football and all that shit. Can I curse on this podcast? Sorry about that.
You can.
Yeah. But
you think Willie does it?
Yeah, you guys, okay. You guys follow all the shit. I don't. But what happens in the NFL if you have a team that goes to somebody who's under contract, right, and says, "Hey, we know your contract is coming up at the end of this year. Why don't you come here for an interview or do all that kind of thing?" Is that considered like tampering or something? Right? You can't. So what we've got is this NIL thing, and
that's 100% the word they use.
Yeah, and so what we've got now with this NIL stuff, and Felters and I talked about this right after the Supreme Court. Go ahead.
The Falcons just got fined. Falcons just got fined for tampering with Cousins.
Yeah. So
draft picks.
So I mean, it's so new, right? And we're literally just finding out the depths of how bad, right? And as a lawyer for 25 years, I understand, the downside of rulings that seemingly have an upside, right? And the upside here really was not about wrestling; it was about football and basketball. And it was that, kids who are the universities are making, when my oldest went to Alabama, you'd go down there and you'd see, at the time, right, you'd see the jerseys in the bookstore. And, whether it was Devontae Smith or whoever it was, you could buy their jersey and, they got nothing. Or remember in that, one of my favorite, wasn't a 30 for 30, but one of those quasi 30 for 30s that ESPN did on the Fab Five. And
Yeah.
Jalen Rose was saying when they were popular, they go to downtown in Michigan, and there were sports stores with Fab Five Nikes, and he's like, dude, like I'm driving a green Dodge Dart, and these people are
Mhm.
making millions of dollars, and the NIL was supposed to be about players being compensated for the use of their name, image, and likeness. And what it's
Yep.
turned into in wrestling as a non-revenue generating sport is what we've basically done is turn the donors into proxies for the programs. And now these proxies are going out, having these discussions like you're talking about, Willie, in any other professional sport, it would be, I guess, as you guys are saying, it would be considered like a tampering thing, and you'd be fined and not allowed
Mhm.
to do.
Yeah, listen, this doesn't have to do with Iowa or Penn State or any one individual. It doesn't even have to do with wrestling. Um,
Correct.
it was when NCAA fought tooth and nail for decades to prevent this from happening. Right? They
Hmm.
didn't want this legislation to go through, and it did. And I think, by all indications, the NCAA said, "All right, y'all got what you wanted. Now you open Pandora's box, and you want us to be the arbiter? You want us to come up with departments to police this? We ain't doing it."
Well, and I think too to add two things. One is that Don knows a lot of wealthy people, and he has kind of led the thought process in my head of understanding just how much these donors want to win, and that for them it's about pride. And what you're seeing now is it is pay for play, which isn't allowed. It's just very wealthy, successful people wanting their team to win and trying to buy a championship. And at some point, you're already getting the Arizona State AD is very upset with the Iowa AD, and apparently they've already talked. This isn't like happening without people being very upset. And Willie, you and Minio take a lot of heat for discussing these numbers that people think aren't true, or maybe they are true. And I see people come at you guys both for saying, why do you primarily only say numbers for Iowa? And from my perspective, I only hear those numbers in the back channel conversations. You hear those numbers a lot more than any other program out there.
Yeah, there's a whole issue there too with how Iowa fans sort of react to what me putting out numbers. Now, there was I put out Buchanan's offer, I put out Teamer's offer, and one time they're the only two offers I've ever put out. They're the only two offers I ever put out. But the narrative on the Hawkeye boards is I put all these Iowa offers out. I put all these Iowa. I don't put all these. I mean, I know what Real got. I know what Parko got. I know what Lillidahl was offered. I know what Matt Ramos was offered. I know what Ladarian Lockett was offered. I know what all these guys were offered.
Dude, you should put them all. You should put them all out. As a
So,
fan, I want to know. I want to know exactly what's going on here. Like I love
no,
I love the news cycle. Like I think you should put every one of them out.
in their opinion, anybody putting out offers for Iowa makes Iowa look bad. And I said, why? You got the most money in the you promoted this new shiny room. Why don't you want to promote highest paid athletes in the game, right? To them, I get to the fans, I guess they think it makes them look desperate, like they need to offer more than other people for people to come there. And that part seems to be true. But frankly, that's not my fucking problem, right? If the offer to Buchanan is 400 or 500,000 and a Tesla, then that's the offer. You worry about perception. Why don't you worry about perception? I'm not like a PR firm for anybody. If you, to some kids, it might be like, damn, I can get paid over there at Iowa. Why don't I go there? Right? So the reaction to the number is up to y'all. It's not up to me as a journalist. It's not up to me as somebody that reports things. It's not my problem.
Yeah,
exactly. So report it. I mean, I think that's right. You know, and look, and in one respect, I think it's this is and I think there's a storm brewing because hopefully Felters is going to join here. But and I'm sure he'll have some comment on this comment. But when all is said and done here, listen, you want to use the system the way I was using the system, then get your program under control. I hate to say it that way, but that's true. You want to have your donors acting as proxies, and you want to have your donors paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to kids for a semester. I'm all for that because I think these kids should get paid that kind of money if that's what they're doing. They work their asses off for a really long time. Get your program under control and control it internally, and don't let it fall apart this way. You want to use the system, use the damn system. There he is.
I'll be honest. It shouldn't. Like my skin should be thicker by this point.
Don, turn your phone sideways.
10, 15 years. But it does bother me when Iowa fans and Iowa people...
never mind. Turn it back.
Now I'm upside down.
Yeah.
When Iowa fans and Iowa people say that...
I'm new to this shit.
I'm out to get Iowa, or I want Iowa to fail, or I'm biased, or I'm a hack, or whatever. It does keep me up at night.
Even though it's just Feller saying those things,
keeps me up at night too because my phone keeps beeping all night long while you guys are going back and forth on the best chat in wrestling.
Hey, I heard the poach thing earlier, but I remember the day after NCAAs when the old staff and Dean Hamidi magically was still enrolled at Wisconsin, was on the campus at Oklahoma State. Was that considered poaching?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. And another poster on the Iowa boards last night said, Willie, I was at NCAAs when an Iowa wrestler was approached. He was about to go wrestle a match, and I was right next to him. And a coach came up and talked to him, and the Iowa wrestler came over and said, "Can you believe that? That guy just tried to recruit me. He just tried to poach me. I'm here at the NCAA tournament. Willie, why don't you report that?" I said, "How the fuck was I supposed to know about that? What are we talking about?"
I think that's a made-up story. Which wrestler they are trying to poach from Iowa?
I said, how was I supposed to report that story? I don't even know it. He goes, you know it now, so go report it. Go report what? Some message board poster said that some wrestler was approached?
I don't know.
I don't know. Again, my view from earlier is, why are we even talking about poaching? Like, Felters, we talked about this 3 years ago, or whatever it was, 2 years ago when the NIL thing came up. Like, these are the rules now. So you don't like the rules, then that's too bad. But at the end of the day, there's no such thing as poaching anymore until they put rules in effect that you can't tamper or do whatever. This isn't really poaching. It's not really about that.
That's another thing, is that, me and Fellers did a long show. We talked about Cadet Worlds, and then we talked about Iowa on two different fronts for about an hour. And the critics, in this instance, the Iowa people, they either choose not to listen to the whole show or pick and choose what they want to hear. Because I defended the first portion of the Iowa segment. I defended and said, "Listen, those are the rules. These are the rules. They're allowed to do it."
Yep. Dr. Don from Facebook, you're the law expert in total. The way I understand all this is that there's, NIL is and the whole portal is interpreted by each state. First of all, it's not a federal one size fits all. It's at the state level, and there's numerous injunctions being filed and being ruled on, or multiple rulings against the NCAA at the state level. And when those rulings come down, then that impacts. So it's an ongoing, like their portal is literally changing by the day. The ruling came down with Tennessee against NCAA that you could actually pay. I think there was scuttlebutt that teamer got paid to actually apply to Iowa. Given the ruling in Tennessee, that's legal. So the portal, as we know it, that first was announced X amount of years ago, basically was a widget to make it official that other schools could contact you. Now, I think we've seen how many guys transfer to other institutions just from Iowa. I think it's 8 guys. None of them were in the portal.
Yeah.
It depends how you define school. It depends how you define school, though.
Yeah.
Is a private donor considered to be, quote, school, close quote? No, that's what I'm saying. They're acting as they're not, but they're acting as proxies for the school. It's interesting.
It's legal.
At this time.
It's legal, but
hold on, Willie. Let's not talk. Let me finish my train of thought here. At this time, I think the only thing that's restricting people from transferring or changing is you can't transfer within the same season. So you could be enrolled maybe first semester and still go second semester somewhere else. I don't know, but technically right now you can't change mid-season.
Right. But
how does that affect wrestling? Because it's a 2-semester sport. Is a season considered like 24, 25? So
I think it's already would be considered, if you're enrolled in Iowa right now, I think you would be held. I think you've seen a lot of those kids that left Iowa. They weren't enrolled in the quote-unquote student directory. I know that doesn't matter, Willie. That's thinking 1994's per your discussion earlier. But they weren't enrolled in one. And then what's insane to me is that you hear this scuttlebutt, and then you hear it maybe on a Saturday, and by Monday morning they're in these other schools' directories. It's like, how the hell do these kids get through admission so quick, too? So I think if you're enrolled in school right now, you're stuck. I'd say you're stuck.
I had 2 different conversations this weekend about that. I said, one, I was talking to a coach, and I said, I don't understand how a kid can end up on campus or decide right now that he's gonna go to a school and submit his application and get accepted in 10 minutes. Dude, I don't know. I haven't applied to college for a long time, but I applied to a lot of colleges when I was an undergrad and grad school. But it was a process, and there were deadlines, and there were, and I don't know. Let's just say let's just use Zach Glazier, for example. On Friday, he was at Iowa, and then Buchanan was coming in, so he's going to transfer, and now he's free and clear to compete at South Dakota State. I'm not saying there's anything nefarious there. I'm not saying there's anything odd there, but I'm saying shit done changed from 20 years ago when I was a college student. They process that paperwork that fast?
I mean,
it depends, Willie. I think in certain situations, it could be, it's a check the box thing, right? And it's like, well, hang on a second here. I'll give you an example. The Chewy, dog food company has a monster donor that, made a shit ton of money when that transaction took place. And he's saying to the South Dakota State people, I give a lot of money to you guys, and, I'm Mr. Chewy. So this paperwork needs to be processed. It needs to be processed tomorrow, and I want this kid on campus because I'm a big, wrestling head, and I want that to happen. So it's a process issue more than anything else at that point, right? But I think what you're saying is right, but I think what we're seeing now, right? We started this by talking about the downside of what's been going on, and it's like I think you just have to reimagine this slightly differently. We're not dealing with college athletics anymore. You're dealing with you have to almost imagine it as this is a professional environment, and in a professional sports environment, these things happen.
The next big thing is going to be the tampering thing that you alluded to earlier. So that's going to be like the tampering thing, like free agency. But the more difficult thing for schools is going to be how are you going to prove tampering? Right? Is the NCAA going to uphold they're going to have their own investigation of what the tampering entails? How long does that case take place? What do universities take to the NCAA and don't they? I mean, wrestling, let's be honest, wrestling on the totem pole is pretty far down there as far as importance and revenue. So like Arizona State,
that's a backdrop too, Adam. That's a backdrop too, is that, and I'm doing this segment in the back of my head is, why are we talking about what we're talking about? Because the Iowa fans right now are saying, I'm only talking about it because it's Iowa. And it's not true. There's so many dynamics in the sport. So this is why we're talking about it, because there's all these changes. And the backdrop to it really is, we're talking about it in wrestling, but as Adam was just alluding to, think about the implications in football and basketball, right? To have these donors cold calling people, waving checks around. You know what I mean?
I'm talking about NCAA going to actually. I'm talking about Arizona State's athletic director and president who went under huge sanctions by the NCAA in April from I think it was Herb Edwards in Arizona State. So they're actually under probation. They lost a bunch of scholarships on football. Are they going to take an item like wrestling, potentially tampering or wherever, to the NCAA and have the chance of maybe one of their other coaches effing up somewhere and they have further restrictions across their whole athletic department? Like, how far stuff's going to get pushed up the flagpole for a sport that doesn't produce any revenue for their thing, that really doesn't affect the athletics, and most athletic directors would probably drop if they had the chance anyways. They cut it. Are they going to willing to put their athletic department scrutiny under other parts of investigations for wrestling? And I think right now is no.
Well, yeah, but they would for football.
Great point.
And they would for football, and they would for basketball. But
those make money, right, Willie. Now, I mean, how many fucking times you got to tell you this? Those fucking make money. Those things make money.
I know, but the law is not going to be
so much
written,
for the cursing concern that I have.
The law is not going to be written for one sport. It's going to be written for all sports. What the point is, now it's allowed to go on. It's legal. And from what I'm told is, when school A is going and saying, hey, our guys are getting contacted by boosters of another program, you know what their compliance tells them? I ain't doing shit with it. The NCAA has told compliance departments that they screwed up the rule, and there's nothing you can do about it right now.
The NCAA wants this all to blow up, guys.
That's crazy.
Let's not keep the NCAA isn't trying to make the portal and things a smooth process for everyone. They want this to blow up. They want the colleges to go the other way, because right now they're having to comply with rules that are being set for them and money out of their pockets. Mm-hmm. The NCAA set this portal thing up in this whole NIL for it to fail, and because they didn't want the ruling to happen anyways. Now it's gained steam. They're fucked. I mean, screwed. Sorry, maybe not even either one.
There's no problem for me to say fucked. It's all
you know
good.
What I'm saying though, like money wise,
it's okay to do that.
Money by the day.
No, look, I think it's. By the way, I think it's a great point. It's like, and I think the point that you raised earlier was even better, which is, if you have a problematic situation going on in one of your sports programs, and it's a non-revenue generating sport like wrestling, you're going to have the football people coming in saying, like, why the hell are we risking like major NCAA sanctions across all of our programs for the wrestling program? And that has huge implications on a go-forward basis. I think it's a really good point that Adam just made. Like, there's no doubt that from a pure wrestling perspective, that the more that this gets out of control on the NIL side of it, and going back to the thing that Willie addressed earlier, and the more chaos that it brings to the Iowa program in this particular set of circumstances, the more light that's shed on it, as we're talking about right now. And you may have people who are in way bigger power positions scratching their heads saying, all right, getting the donors under control, which may ultimately be a good thing, right? From a wrestling perspective. But,
keep in mind,
if it continues like this, there's definitely going to be issues. Like, what's going on here is, I don't think it's an issue because it's well within the rule set. It could be a problem to traditionalists, but at the end of the day, we're not in a traditional world right now.
At Iowa, keep in mind that Kirk Ferentz just took a one game self-imposed suspension for tampering that happened 2 years ago. So it's not like these sports just live in like a single silo, right? So
Exactly.
the AD at Iowa, there may be heat there. We don't know all the components inside the multiple programs going on. My thing about the whole NIL deal, and I brought this up on Willie's show, was how when your program becomes so dependent on success based on NIL, right, and maybe one or two donors. What happens when that donor maybe isn't happy with the results, or maybe they don't get to call the shots, or maybe whatever, and that money pulled? Then what state of is your program in? I mean, I think that's a risk. You can play that. On one side, you're doing maybe being successful using it. On the other side, you got to look at your infrastructure and say, well, how much risk am I really putting at the program becoming so dependent on this? And I think that's to be determined, because as we know, and we've seen historically, people with a lot of money that have some tie to wrestling, like wrestling, because there's not any money, right? And they most times are given an obscene amount of power, and they like that. So we'll see what happens, but
Totally.
I think it's a mix. But I don't think you can become recruiting, everything else, so dependent year to year on what is available in the market. And I said this market price is set now. If so and so got $5 or $500,000, if an NCAA champ, I mean, let me throw this to you guys. Is it beneficial for you, if money's important to you, that if you have a successful NCAA, everybody should go in the portal just to see what your market value is? Why wouldn't you? If money's important to you,
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a case could be made, and I freaking hate it, because all it is freaking circus. But if the tool is there to use, and I took third at NCAAs, I took third on March 24th, and the portal opens. The portal is open. Why not put your name in there and see if somebody calls you and says, "I'll give you $500,000"?
I think you're going to see that more and more now.
100%.
You could, but two things can happen. One, it creates discord between your head coach and yourself. That's for the individual. And for the sport as a whole, good Lord, that's a circus.
Yeah, big time.
I think it's interesting, Willie. Two perspectives here, right? And again, it's just one of those things. It's like, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, it depends on the perspective that you look at it, right? And if all I've heard for the last 13 or 14 years that I've been somewhat closely involved in this sport is, the kids need to get paid more money. It's not fair. Wrestlers don't make enough money. They need to make earning living wage. Remember back in 2012, when Coleman Scott was looking to make the Olympic team, he was landscaping on the side to make money, to actually survive, right? And it was like, that's wrong. We should be doing more for these kids. Okay, so now there's money flowing. People can make a lot of money. You're paying David Taylor and his staff millions of dollars, to coach a program. Kids are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually compete and do something. The one side of me says that's a great thing, because that's exactly what everybody wanted. The flip side to that is, if that's the athlete perspective, right? Then you look at it from what you're talking about, which is as legitimate of a way to look at it. And that is, we're looking at this from a program survival perspective. And if there's going to be chaos thrown into these programs, okay, maybe this is a bad thing. My take on it is that if you're going to use your donors, or your donors are being used as proxies, okay, this becomes a Tom Brands issue. Like, what's going on within the room is who's ever leading that room doesn't have control of the entirety of the program. If you have donors going out saying, again, not to equate it to politics, but it's like Trump saying, I know nothing about Project 2025, while in the meantime, all the people who he's connected to are involved with Project 2025. And there's chaos that's coming from it. Like, we'll lead better. Understand what your donors are doing and get involved and head it off right at the pass. be involved in the process as opposed to, what's happening now. Again, I have no idea whether the brands is involved in the process or not, but it seems like there's a disconnect there.
Yeah, that's another good avenue to pursue in, once again, why we're talking about what we're talking about at Iowa. Because I was on record for several shows. I said, your job is to put the best team on the mat, right? Your job is to try to do as best as you can. And they are doing that. And some people are taking offense. Oh, you're just throwing money at kids. And, oh, you're reaching out to kids that aren't in the portal. Hey, it's all within the rules. They should be doing what they're doing. However, one of the dynamics of this situation is that, one, the fans are mad that the figures are getting out. Whose fault is that? That's not the messenger's fault. It's not the kid's fault. It's not. I mean, you're the quarterback of the team. You're the head coach of the team. Now maybe Tom doesn't care if the numbers get out. I don't know. Maybe it's only these fans. But if you don't want the numbers out, then run a ship that the numbers don't get out.
Well, I also
number
don't.
one. And number two, it's creating discord amongst the team, obviously, right?
But I don't think it's just the coaches who are making the offers. I think what also happens is these kids are going back to their programs and saying, I was offered this, and those coaches are also talking, saying, my athlete just got offered X. So it's not just the coach, but the athletes are also telling their coach, hey, I was offered this to go here. And then that's getting out as well.
Of course.
Let me ask you this, though. We're seeing this influx of money, right, from donors to NIL. And we're seeing a lot of programs having to raise money from donors to keep kids in programs, correct? I think historically before NILs came in, I think if you look at the last 8 years at the senior level, it's been under the notion that they're going to raise these funds to fund your RTC to keep athletes around to train your athletes, okay, or to help with the college team. What's going to be the trickle effect here we're going to see maybe over the next couple of years is how much there's not an incremental amount of money coming into these programs that still funds the RTC plus on top of the NIL to keep or get new athletes. What impact does this happen to the senior level and kind of I'm going to call it somewhat of a free ride the centralized USA Wrestling's been under, because let's make no realms about it. Like the first through fourth on the ladder stipend they begin monthly is pretty similar to what it was 10 years ago. It hasn't been an influx, or that standalone isn't enough to sustain guys continue to wrestle. So now if you're having to pay,
how does that, by the way, how does that compare to the executive director and the head coach of freestyle?
Yeah.
Exactly. So
listen, if you're Rich Bender, you know what's going on, and you know there's a Bob Nichols, and you know there's a what's his name, Chad Richardson. You know there's a Chad Richardson, and you know, aren't you like a little jealous? Like, hey, why don't you you want some power, you want some influence, you want to be involved with wrestling. Why don't you come here and donate here and up the stipend, and we'll up the stipend of our athletes.
That's my point. They're already these local clubs, these RTCs, let's say top 15 or whatever. These guys are footing the bill for USA Wrestling to then come in and say, "Look what we did, guys. We brought this team together." They're not paying shit at the national level. It's all getting funded at the local level. So now that local money is going to go from RTC and keep guys around to the college guys, because I was on a board for X amount of years at HWC. The guys are only giving money to the RTC because they want to see the college guys win. They don't give two shits about
Absolutely.
Olympic.
Well, that was the first.
The pride is in the university, not in a USA Wrestling thing.
Correct.
When NIL first got approved, all of us said on shows, the first thing that's going to happen is a lot of these programs aren't going to have 3 senior level guys. They're going to use that money for NIL.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what the trickle effect is, but it can't be when you're able to have a slush fund or raise money just to pay your guys to keep them on a retention, right? Also, you can increase your scholarship count. So now there's 30 scholarships that can potentially go on the books. But let's not be foolish here. That 9.9 is a thing of the past. There's so many guys getting funded on a year-to-year basis out of NIL on a scholarship. Yeah. So you're going to see that trickle fund.
I was going to ask that earlier, fellas. Like, does scholarships even? You lose a scholarship, big deal. Does that even mean anything at this point in the era of NIL? It doesn't mean anything.
No. But what we're all saying is true. However, we're also talking about, when it comes to wrestling, we're also talking about like maybe 6 teams. This ain't going on at the other 70.
What do you mean?
Maybe Iowa's paying some guys. Maybe Penn State's paying some guys. Maybe Okie State's paying some guys. Maybe Michigan's paying some guys. You think Pitt's paying people? You think?
Well, they're most definitely. If you think all the rest of the programs, I'm not going to speak for. I'm sure there's some out there that are just operating under their 9.9 or whatever their scholarship is, and they're not giving a kid $10,000, from that was in their club to cover their tuition or room and board as part. It's an NIL deal, but it's not officially a scholarship. You're a blooming idiot if you don't think that's happening.
Where?
What do you mean where? Well, do you know the amount of money
it's happening at like 10 places tops.
Okay.
Where's it happening at?
I think it's happening a lot more than you think. These other schools, definitely, their alumni have money. They're definitely...
I'm saying, here's a couple $1,000. It's not $500,000.
Right.
I'm talking about $5,000 to subsidize. We're not going to put you on scholarship. You're not on our 9.9. We're going to give you $5,000. You would have been a walk-on before.
Yeah, sure. But...
So that's still NIL, right?
Yeah. But...
It's being disguised as NIL.
I want to go back to Willie's point about the coach's job is to put the best team on the mat, right? Because the coach's job is to win, right? And when we're talking about wrestling and we're talking about college wrestling, let's just be realistic here, right? And I think there's a bit of a history now with this NIL, with what Michigan has done over the last couple of years. The reality is that everybody's chasing the juggernaut, and the question becomes, how do you do it? And it's kind of interesting. I think this David Taylor, Kennedy, Gilman move to Oklahoma State, I think sets up a kind of interesting look given what we've seen so far, right? Which is, it doesn't appear as if, and that this could definitely change, but at the moment it doesn't appear as if David is going to go the route of getting a lot of donor money to give it to kids. I think the donor money was given to him and to his coaches. Right, and maybe to Roman, and he's doing some different stuff. I think you're going to see it play out as, well, is Okie State now going to come up and become the number 2 team, nipping at Penn State's heels by doing it the way that Kale and those guys are doing it, which is kind of, if they're giving money, it's kind of behind the scenes, it's not a public thing, and they do have this aura that people don't go to Penn State for money, they go to Penn State to win, right? Now with David and the Oklahoma State thing, you sort of have a balance where it seems as if he's taking the same philosophy that I'm going to want to recruit people to come to Oklahoma State, and my carrot isn't going to be, my Chewy donor isn't going to write, a multi-$100,000 check to them. My carrot is going to be, I'm going to teach you how to win and become a national champion and be around a culture that is a winning national championship culture. Right? Versus what we're seeing now, apparently seeing, I don't know, but you're apparently seeing at Iowa, which is there's some infighting, or what you've seen at Michigan, where a couple of the young guys have also transferred out saying, like, all right, if we're going to be paying one-off people like the New York Yankees used to do, as opposed to building a program around people, right? You're building, basically what they're doing is they're building a program around donors. And, look, as they say, right, I think the phrase is fate is fickle. And when all is said and done, like, I don't think there's any better comment to use than super wealthy people. Super wealthy people are very fickle. And it's, today you could be the greatest thing since sliced bread. If you don't really deliver what they not that you promise, but what they expect of you to deliver, then fate will be fickle to that particular person. You know, we talked about that in the context of the David Taylor thing, and we argued vehemently about it. That my opinion is, you're writing some dude $1 million check to coach a team. You expect him to win quickly. If he doesn't win quickly, you may see a shift.
I do.
I don't think that's any different with these kids. If you're going to build a program around these single semester transfers, it better bear fruit. Because if it doesn't bear fruit, you may lose your program at the same time as you lose your donor support if it doesn't work out.
I do think it's really interesting. I will be watching what David Taylor does pretty intently, because the word is that he doesn't want to be heavy on NIL, and it sounds like for culture reasons, for maintaining the right hunger and wrestling for the right reasons. Now, I'm sure that if he needs a 49-pounder in a couple years and there's one out there, he'll make an offer, right? If he's desperate for one, he'll pay him. But I don't think he's going to be overboard. I think he's going to really limit himself NIL wise, and I'm hoping.
But why do you think his mind says that? Why do you think Kale's? And I've said this, and we've already seen this happen the last couple months at Iowa. Allegedly, this happened. Why Kale's going to offer these guys? If Kale offers anybody to come to Penn State, and you got the already on your team guys have already delivered the success, you're negotiating against yourself. You can't bring in a guy in at $100,000. You're sitting here with 5 guys that have been placed top 3 that you're not paying $100,000 to, and say, okay, here's this guy came in for $100,000, and then he's saying, okay, now I got to deal another 1.5 to just keep the guys on the roster happy. It becomes just negotiating against yourself. So David, or where Kale's at, right? And you keep talking about the word juggernaut, and I think it's interesting. There are a couple of things here. We heard from criticism from Iowa, and they got all these 6-year guys, do whatever. If Penn State doesn't have all their 6-year guys this year, right? I think maybe the landscape of NCAA wrestling looks a little bit different. You've got Bo, Carter, and Kirk coming back, right? Is this all 6-year? And we're seeing some exit out of their club side. I think Oklahoma State, Ohio State, Iowa, Cornell, no one's going to take them head on. I think there's some guys or some people that can piece them off here and there that maybe dilutes them a little bit. I think you're also going to see at some point there's not going to be people going to be sitting behind guys for 3 years at Penn State. We haven't seen any transfer yet at a major thing. I think right now, not this year, but I think the next, let's call it 25, 26 through 28. If anybody's going to put a hole in their armor, if they don't get knocked off at there, then fucking just pack the bags and send it in because it's over. I think that's going to be their biggest point of vulnerability is the next 3 years.
That's why I think it's really interesting to watch what David does. I don't know.
Ohio State
I agree.
Ohio State had the best recruiting class ever. Everybody's just forgetting about Ohio State. Now they haven't got any transfers, but as far as young talent coming in and looking at your article that you put together this week, Ohio State's recruited better than anybody the last X amount of years. They had the super class. No one's talking about Ohio State.
Really, maybe we should be talking about Ohio State more, because they've been perennial top 10. They won a national title, top 5, and they don't seem to be. They recruit really well. They don't seem to be going hog wild on NIL.
Well,
but yet
they got a class.
But yet they're consistently at the top. What's that?
You're pretty log jam on probably what your investment is on some of these young guys. They're just freshmen. Maybe they already have invested in these guys to bring in somebody over top of them already. I mean, their class of Bouzakis and Mendez and Feldman, and I'm gonna miss 10 other guys that they had there, right? I mean, it was probably one of the best.
Who's the kid who was in the finals this year? The 177.
Rocco Welch.
Rocco was
yeah,
the
Rocco
year
Welch.
after.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable class.
So they made,
but
they
you already saw them.
already.
You already saw them land Davino. They're going hard after Blaze, but that you don't hear any rumors about them paying beyond scholarships.
Well, again, I still think there's marching orders from the top down on some of these athletic departments on how wide you're going to get in casting your net. Keep in mind, you have Ohio State football that had 121 transfers, right? And when you talk about funding at universities and what's important, Ohio State wrestling is a thing of the past. I mean, it's not. In that environment, it's not a big talked about thing. That, I guess, that also is the tip of the hat to how important wrestling is to the University of Iowa. How much money this program is really invested in it because they want to win. You know what I mean? You can look at two sides of it.
Yeah, but you also just said there's marching orders from up on high about how you should be doing it, what you should be giving. But there doesn't seem to be, I mean, to this point, there hasn't been any pushback from the athletic department to say, hey, you guys are doing too much NIL stuff to
because every
Iowa.
dollar, at 99 out of $100, or probably more than that, 99.9 of donor money available to Ohio State's going to football, period. Outside of whatever the Rudis is maybe supporting, right?
Well, it's independent though. It's not like the money has to go to the general scholarship fund and then the athletic department determines how to divvy that up. Take a guy like Bob Nichols. Bob Nichols goes in there and he says, I'm going to use my money to do this. And he does it. Ohio State can have a guy like that. Penn State can have a guy like that. Bloomsburg can have a guy like that.
Who's Ohio State's big donor, Willie?
Rudis, probably. I don't know.
Okay.
So what does that have to do with football?
Because it's 200. I think their revenue is like $280 million a university a year. Like, how much money they've spent on this football program, this team this year is like the greatest football team ever roster. The influx on levels of importance to athletic department, football's got, I mean, bar none, top tier. And that's
I'm not arguing that, but that to me that doesn't limit how much money can go to wrestling. It doesn't limit how many booster dollars can go to wrestling. If I have a gazillion dollars, I
think we're a little far afield from the initial point, but it's a really good point, and that is we're sitting. I'm saying wrongly that maybe we should look at Oklahoma State and to see how that plays out over time, whether developing your own or whether doing the NIL thing is going to work out. And I think you guys bring up a really good point. Feller says, "What about Ohio State?" That's probably the better barometer. Right, because they're certainly not. They brought in nobody. Again, Oklahoma State brought in 4 guys. Yes, it was pre-David, but they still brought in 4 guys. Ohio State didn't bring in anybody from a graduate from an NIL perspective, and they do have a really solid, good young team. For the
and
next
if you
couple
look
of
at
years.
it too, again, has nothing to do with David, but the composition of Okie State's team right now, if you add Spratley and Jamison, good Lord. Right? Yeah. How many transfers is that now?
6.
6 out of the 10. 60% of the lineup.
So, if you say who the top 5 schools are this year, and hell, by March it might be the top 3. We're talking about a lot of teams. Iowa and Okie State could end up being podium teams. And both of them have more than half of their starters began at a different college.
They didn't say, "Oh, Michigan national runner-ups," but they had X amount of transfers. No one gives a shit.
I didn't say that. I said one of my point is we're in a totally new era. You know.
Hey, let me ask you this. I posed a question on Twitter. I mean, you got into this before. People say, "Oh, that program, they really develop guys." When I say that to you, Dr. Don from Facebook, what does the word "develop" mean to you when people use that term?
When they come into the program, like from a wrestling perspective, they come into a program
Oh,
at
they
a
say
certain
like,
level, and they leave at a
Penn State,
better level.
this program really develops guys. So this guys, they don't develop at this program. What does that mean? It's just like a cliche word that we hear all the time anymore.
No, I mean, I'll give you examples. I mean, again, I use this example all the time. I think I point to the Rutgers program, and I say you have kids come in that seemingly have go to the Rutgers room, and when you look back after their 4-year career, you look back and you say, huh, it seems like this kid peaked before he got to college. And to me, that means that you didn't develop your talent. You have, kids who are coming out of New Jersey who, you see them year in and year out in the state finals. They end up going to, a one champion state. They go to Rutgers, and it seems like they regress because they were placing on the national level. And then they stop. I mean, fellas, we've done that analysis, right? It's like you have a top 5 recruiting class, and not a single one of those top 5 recruiting class people end up on the podium after 5 years. That means you're not developing the good talent that you're getting coming in. The flip side of it is that you have other programs that either maintain the talent level of their kids coming in or increase the talent level of their kids coming in over the course of time. And it's not really hard. It's an objective assessment. There are 8 podium spots. And you look at those 8 podium spots when kids come in, and it's like this kid's, a not missed prospect. I look at it. I've been trashed about it because he did win a title and he was a 4-time All-American. But I'll say it all along. Like I would be interested to see what happened if Anthony Ashnalt went someplace else, because he was beating Zayn right before they went to college, and he's had that amazing series of Super 32 titles, which was crazy, so right? Just gauntlet wins, right? And then he goes in, and it's like I don't know. He had a great career, but could the career have been a lot? When you think about it, it's like wow, like his high school career was fucking lights out. And then he went in, he won a title and stayed home. And I think there's some benefit to that. I give the kid some credit for, basically trying to help build a program in his home state because he's a Jersey kid through and through. So there are other considerations to it. But from a development perspective, again, I use the Rutgers all the time. It's like, do those kids really develop there? And I get, kind of side note here. I think with Joe Pollard now, on the lightweight side of it, and, Sebastian Rivera's now had some success, on the international level. So maybe that's changing a little bit, but I do think the Rutgers lightweights did perform this year. I mean, they did have an All-American at 33, and it wasn't like Nicky coming in and transferring in, right? They did have actually a homegrown All-American there, and they've a couple of kids that they've had some homegrown people in. But I think the influence of Joe Pollard on the lightweights, I think you're going to see that increase more, and then we'll have more of a development strategy or a better development strategy there. Long-winded definition, Felters, or long-winded response, but I think it's simple.
The topic drives me nuts, and if you think that even the bluest of blue chips means that you are a shoo-in for college success, you're just full of shit. Like, you just don't know what you're talking about. You don't go from high school. You're not the number one prospect, and that automatically makes you a national champ. It's not the way it works.
That's across any sport.
I know, but when you have people that say development no longer exists, or they only win because they recruit so well, you're just trying to not give credit is what you're doing. Because anybody that thinks that Zain Rutherford was 3-time, you weren't predicting Zain Rutherford to win 3 titles. If you predicted Zain Rutherford to win 3 titles when he was a senior in high school, You're an idiot. If you were predicting Carter Starachi to be a 4-time national champ when he was a junior in high school, you're an idiot. So talk about development. You're goddamn
So give me
right.
the
You're telling me that you saw like you're telling me that the coaching staff at Penn State had nothing to do with Jason Nolf being as prolific as he was. Oh no, that was just raw talent. Because that's what you're saying.
No, I didn't say that. I'm not.
That's
You're paring it down at Penn State. I'm saying when people say they develop guys, what does that mean?
It means they.
I think too. There's another thing about there's another thing about development.
Huh?
There's another thing about development that's lost in the shuffle here, right? And I guess I'm probably the only guy on this podcast that has actually, had children go to college, right? There's more to development than just developing from a wrestling talent perspective, right? When all is said and done, like the development of changing from, we've all been through it, of changing from living in mom and dad's house and under mom and dad's thumb to actually having some independence. I think, look, we're seeing it, and we've seen it over the course of time. Like, Penn State doesn't have problem children. Maybe they do, and maybe those, I guess they have a few here and there. But at the end of the day, keeping your social house in order is as important as developing wrestling talent. It's developing the ability to actually independently operate on your own, show up and do those things that's going to increase your wrestling level skills. That's important.
Hell yeah! Excellent point.
Hey,
part of development.
You segue right for me, Dr. Don. So, how much? I'm going to go full circle here, and I'm going to get Willie's brain to grow just a little bit, even though he's got a battery pack on the back of his head. Most call that a fatty tumor, but he calls it a battery pack. Is how much does your partners and guys that are older than you that have already performed at the level you want to go to, how much of that is impactful to your development? And I'd say it's fucking huge, because kids that come into a program and within the first 6 months, they're already beating everybody in the room, or going and not still taking lumps, or there's not something to aspire to. They're becoming like, they're the alpha of the room, week 1 in their weight. Their level of development is going to be pretty capped out, right? Like, because you don't have anything to aspire to. You're already the best in your environment, or not getting pushed in your environment. That's going to be hard to develop in. But when you're going back to the club, going back to look at the workout partners around those weights of Nolf and Zayn and Carter and all those guys. Look at Messenbrink's come up. Look at Levi Haynes come up. Would you said Levi Haynes was the national runner-up as a true freshman? Hell no, I wouldn't have. Or look at Kasich this year. I'd never say Kasich was going to be third grade, but that doesn't happen without the level of partners that they're getting their chops licked every day in practice. You're going to have to up your level, or you're going to get run the fuck out. So that program bleeds guys out, or it filters guys without having the coaching staff to do anything. If you're not made for it, you're going to get your ass beat, and you're going to exit to left, or you're going to up your level and you're going to continue to get better or develop, right?
Yes. But they do indeed develop, because they have those guys there. Right?
Yeah.
That is
one other thing too that I've heard from
that's both good points, right, Adam? Getting your butt beat and having guys in the room that can beat your butt is important and contributes to your development. Don, environment and culture and being happy contributes to your development. And that's one thing
100%.
Everybody likes to dunk on Penn State. We have fun. And it does get a little overbearing when they say it, but
yeah, they're saying fun is kicking your ass and winning. That's their
hidden
fun.
Hidden in that is that it's an environment that you enjoy, right? And that contributes to your development. You don't grow, you don't develop when you don't like going to your place of work every day. When you're going into your office and you're like, God
Totally.
damn, I don't want to do this shit. But if you go in there, man, I can't wait to get to work. You have
Well, here's
better
the other thing.
results.
You know, I don't want to turn this into a Penn State love session for a lot of different reasons. But you know, one thing that I'll throw in here, and I've heard this from multiple guys who wrestled for Penn State that were high level dudes, and they said, and this sort of I think goes full circle to what we started this conversation with, which is disarray in a room, right? I've heard from multiple people that when they wrestled poorly, the longest walk, and these are exact words, the longest walk of my life was walking from the center back to the corner looking at Kale, knowing that I didn't perform my best. And he exudes that as the leader, that coaching staff, they exude that respect in their kids that I don't think you have at a lot of places. And I think from a quote development perspective, part of that development is ensuring that the kids that you are responsible for have that respect for you. I've also heard from multiple of the Penn State parents that there is no issue dropping their kid off, knowing that for 4 years or 5 years that they're going to be looked after by that coaching staff. And I think that, as much as anything else, contributes to that overall development side of things, which is more than just on the mat. They're confident that on the mat and off the mat, they will develop these people because of that respect for the coaching staff. And I think that's an important point.
When you're a kid coming into Penn State, I would assume this. You walk in, you say you want to win national, world Olympic medals, right? You've got environment guys that have already done that. You got to watch and observe them every day, how they handle themselves, what they do, what they don't do. If your behavior doesn't start to mimic or fall in line with the senior people around you, or either on the team or at the next level in the senior level, then you're saying one thing and doing another. Basically, they don't have to try to tell you how to do it. You got to watch every day, and the culture kind of leads itself. Like, you either fall in line and everybody does the same thing, because guess what? We all want to win. This guy's leading the way by winning. So why would we do anything differently, right? It's kind of the hands-off.
Isn't that what David is trying to do at Oklahoma State, Willie? Isn't that what you're saying?
Isn't that what Gable did?
Focusing on that NIL side of it.
Isn't that what Gable did
Sure,
for his
forever.
run of however many years?
Mm-hmm.
What Kale's doing
Absolutely.
is not like, it's not new, guys. It's not new, but he stayed consistent on it. And
It may not be new, but he's the only one doing it at this point, other than maybe what David is trying to start right now. But maybe that's consistent with wrestling. You've always had one dominant program for a long period of time. It's just his turn. But he has definitely instilled in those kids that you need to go out and. Gable used to say this all the time. Right, in that there was a great interview. They did a great piece before the 1993, I think, finals. Right, the McElravy, great comeback, and the Phantom takedown where, Sunderland lost. The Penn State kid lost. Right, that year. But there's a lineup to that. There's a lineup to that, and Gable is sitting there talking to the 4 finalists, whatever that they had. He's like, the end of it is great. He's like, most importantly, and he's got that, that Gable look on his face with the fist pump. He's like, just compete, right? And it's like that instills in those kids that just compete. When you don't compete, that's what makes it a long walk back, right back to the corner. And I think that's as important to the development as anything else.
I think you hear that out of Kale about having fun in the process. And it's cliche, but winning takes care of itself when you're having fun in the when you enjoy competing. And a lot of people, especially in wrestling, it's the ultimate mano a mano sport. It's like, it's a win or a loss. It's a win or a loss. But
when they use the word fun, it's
on a good topic. That's I got to split because I've got to go get on another call to figure out how I compete with the 100-pound elephants that we're catching tomorrow. So
that's why.
All right, boys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. So I'll talk to you. See you in the chat.
See you in the chat. Bash.
We have a couple topics we could talk about. if you want to go for a few more minutes.
Well, I do.
All right, let me go pee real quick. You talk to the chat.
Let's make it clear. Let's make it clear that the answer to the question was yes. There's development.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me pee real quick. Hang on.
He's gonna pee. I said there's an answer to development, an answer to the question, and it is that there indeed exists development, and whether that's, I feel like there's some weird vibe that there's a certain segment of wrestling people that don't want to give Kale the credit, whether that's they doubt his technical acumen or whatever the case may be. They don't want to give him credit for, oh, he recruits so well, so that means he has to do less developing. No, he provides a environment. He provides technique. I mean, they go, and nowhere else do they go from prospect to champion like Penn State right now.
So I also think part of Adam's question was simply, we talk a lot about do guys develop or who has. So I don't think he wasn't saying that guys develop or don't develop. I just think he was posing the question of what to you is guys developing. But all right, couple other topics real quick because we went pretty long on that segment. Couple thoughts real quick. One, Gable. Gable was released yesterday by the Buffalo Bills as they cut down to their 53-man roster. I think it sounds like he's going to be signed to the practice squad where he'll make $225,000 for the season. And these guys that are like, he's cut, come back to wrestling, he's not coming back to wrestling. He's got so many different things he can just keep trying and just keep making money and developing along the way. I don't think, if he's not doing anything serious, could I see him maybe trying out in 2028? Sure. But he ain't coming along for the wrestling and ranking series across the world, and he's had a taste of the WWE, now the NFL, and it sounds like he's going to be in a practice squad with the Bills. It sounds like that. It's not official yet, but that's what it sounds like. And again, he's going to make $250,000 to develop in the NFL. So I don't think he's coming back to wrestling, and I do think that's a good move for him still.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him for not wrestling. I think he should do. I think Gable should do whatever he wants to do, whether that's WWE or wrestling or become a stockbroker. Whatever the case is, whatever the case may be. Obviously, I don't like personally when we have a Mason Paris type high school wrestler that could go football, wrestling, and they go football. Right? I want to keep him in wrestling. And so if I had my choice, Gable would wrestle. But that's what I want. That's not what Gable wants. So I hope he has success in whatever he does.
Yeah. Next note of topic, Zayn Rutherford. This is really, it didn't get a lot of attention because it's just the middle of summer, but Zayn was all set with State College. Had nothing to do with Penn State. It was just he was going to go in finance. He was taking a job. He was moving his family to Jersey and to work in that tri-state area. And he has completely deviated from that. And he is now sticking around State College. And, you know, we just saw Jason Nolf retire. He's out of State College. He's going to Austin, Texas. His company is going to be based out there. He's not wrestling anymore. He's going to do some jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. But he wants to, you know, focus on his company, which is based in Austin now. And he just did a whole podcast about that. Go to the Athletes Ocean YouTube channel. You can watch that. I'm probably going to have him on here soon too. But I think that was big for them. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So I don't know the details. That's the first I'm hearing that Zayn is staying in State College. So let me just set you up so you can tell the audience. So it was announced that Zayn was going to be a coach at Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. And my knee-jerk reaction was, oh, I thought he was moving to Jersey. So maybe he's going to work on Wall Street and come back twice a month and coach club sessions. That's not the case. He's staying in State College?
He's staying in State College. And I was joking with him. A lot of guys, I ask these guys, I try to be respectful of news, how they want it out there. And it's, I've known David Carr was going for 2 weeks now to the World Team Trials at 79 kilos. He didn't want it out there yet. And, some of these guys like to wait until they register. That's fine, So I was joking with Zayn, like, a couple weeks ago, like, hey, so should I put the retirement graphic out? And he's like, no, because all I've heard is that this was it for him. And so obviously, he got a concussion before the Olympics. He went out there anyways and tried his best. And so now I'm like, okay, Zayn, is this it? And he goes, well, pump the brakes. I'm not competing anytime soon, but I wouldn't rule out a potential comeback. And so then I said, well, but if you're moving on and going to Jersey and going in the finance world, it's very hard in today's day and age to make a comeback after going to a professional career outside of wrestling. And that's when it's like, well, he's also not going to Jersey anymore. He's going to stay in State College. And he's going to be a coach with the NLWC, which I think is huge, as you have this natural progression where Nolf's out of NLWC, Taylor, Gilman, Roman Bravo Young, and you got all this young talent coming up in this next quad, and I think it's just a natural progression. I don't think it's a mass exodus. I think if you look at it, Taylor retired, Gilman retired, Nolf retired, Zayn and Nick Lee are staying on as coaches, and Nick Lee's definitely not done. Zayn, I don't know that we'll see Zayn again. He's not competing anytime soon, but he's not ruling it out of a comeback, whether it's in a year, whether it's in 2028, whatever it might be.
So, it is like a full-time gig.
Yeah, he's staying in State College as one of the assistant coaches with the NLWC.
That's awesome.
Which, by the way, I don't know. What?
There are murmurs that maybe David's going to wrestle again.
I wouldn't give too much. David has said that his career is done, and he wants to focus on being a coach. And in that decision to take that role was made. Now, can he change his mind? Absolutely. Do I think we ever see him again compete? No. David took one of the most lucrative, if not the most lucrative, salaried coaching positions ever in the sport, and David is the guy that when he does something, he's going to go all in. And I think his focus is growing that Oklahoma State program and turning him into a champion. So no, I don't think we ever see David again. But I don't know if you did see it this morning. Titan Mercury late last night registered their guys for the World Team Trials, and it is going to be good.
Yeah.
We'll do a preview show as it gets closer to it and the full field. But already you got Derringer, Burrows, Marsteller, David Carr, all at 79 kilos.
79 is bonkers. 61's thin right now, right?
Yes and no. You got Dayton Fix. You got Vito Aruja. You got Nashawn Garrett. You got Seth Gross.
Oh, I didn't see Vito in there.
Well, Vito hasn't registered yet, but he's... Okay. Vito and Zahid Valencia are sitting in the finals. Because they're last year's world medalists, Vito winning gold, Zahid winning bronze. So they have a bye to the best of three finals. And when I shared out the graphic that they both have that bye, they both reshared it instantly. Neither one of them told me, hey, no, I'm not actually going to go take that. So even though they haven't registered yet, Vito and Zahid are in, and they're in the finals.
Good.
But yeah, that field's looking fun.
92.
70 is going to be fun already. Alec Pantelio, Evan Henderson, Yaya Thomas, Andrew Aliris.
Is Aliris in there?
Aliris is in there. Bryce Andonian, Wyatt Sheets. Yeah.
Dude, Bryce Andonian, crazy. I mean, I guess he did. Did he medal at U23s one year? Didn't Andonian make a team?
Oh, man. I thought he did, didn't he? I thought he made the U23 team.
He did. He did. I'll look it up. He definitely made a run somewhere. Um, we should. How engaged are you going to be able to be? Again, it's a European time zone, but how engaged are you going to be for juniors? Yeah, he was junior bronze in 21.
Okay, that sounds about right. I'm going to be pretty engaged because looking at the schedule yesterday, I get up between 4:45 and 5:15 every day. Action in Spain is going to start for Junior World Championships next week at 4 a.m. So even if I get up in my normal time, it's kind of like the Olympics. Like, I might miss a first round match, but waking up and putting it on, like, I'm going to be right into it with that Penn State World team.
I'm pumped. We got a great team. Yeah. What do we got? 6 or 7 of 8 are Penn State guys?
5 of 8 are, or 5 of 10 are already committed to Penn State. And then you got Bo Bassett and Jax Forrest.
Mm-hmm. And then who are the other ones that are already committed? Are Keeter is at Iowa.
Hold on, I just tweeted out the other day, so let me pull it up.
Keeter's at Iowa, and then there's another one.
I did the graphic. Sorry, not Jax Forrest. I meant Marcus Blaze. All right, here's the team and their college affiliation. Luke Lillidahl, Penn State. Marcus Blaze, uncommitted. Bo Bassett, uncommitted. P.J. Duke, Penn State. D. Lockett, Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State. Yeah.
Zach Ryder, Penn State. Josh Barr, Penn State. Connor Marisola, Penn State. Justin Rademacher, Oregon State. And then Ben with Iowa.
I kind of want to. I'd like to go over there. I'd like to.
I'm surprised you're not going.
Oregon State guys. I haven't gone anywhere. I should have picked one. I don't know. It's been a weird year, and it's weird living out here too. It's like, I'm gonna be honest. If I would still lived in Pennsylvania, I would have went to 1 or 2 of these. I don't. Listen, I have to fly halfway. I have to fly all the way across the country, then all the way over the Atlantic Ocean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listen, you should have never left the East Coast. I'm actually, where I'm planning a trip. Maybe we can get you to go too. I was in Tampa the last couple of days for business, and end up getting to see my guy Luke Gardner. Monday night we had dinner, and we were talking.
Is he in Florida?
Yeah, Luke's in Tampa. And we are talking about making a trip in the fall to UNC. So you should try to make that one. That would be a fun trip.
Oh, yeah. I was just in a draft with Chenzo. He had the first pick, and he drafted. He's so good. He's good.
Chenzo's a football brain.
I don't like saying that people are good in fantasy, but Chenzo's good.
Yeah. He was trying to get me into a league this year, but I just couldn't make it work. My August is too busy. I had no time to do prep. I've never been in a league, and his league and the amount of rules I was going through are just crazy. But I do want to do one with you guys. I got to be able to do my homework. I got to be able to prepare. So yeah, that is a very lengthy discussion on the transfer portal, developing athletes, some news tidbits, and it's going to start rolling here because we'll go next week already is Junior World Championships all week. Greco Monday through Wednesday. Women's Freestyle Wednesday through Friday. Men's Freestyle next Friday through next Sunday. And then that following weekend is the World Team Trials.
Man, there is a lot of heavy hitters at juniors.
Yeah.
Between Iran and Russia, there's a lot of guys that are already like seasoned, like beat senior level guys.
Yeah, somebody was saying that Russia's guys, AIN, like their squad is apparently unreal. I got a question for you because I don't follow the cadet scene like you do. Japan, are they not good? Yeah, they were not even in like the top 8 or something at Cadet Worlds last week. After their insanely dominant Olympic performance, were you surprised?
Yeah. Was I surprised at Japan's performance?
Yeah.
I mean, they're usually okay. They're usually that. are a little bit better, but I mean they don't kick ass in men's freestyle at cadets.
But that's what I'm saying.
It's
I know what you're saying, but I'm saying with the context of what their Olympic performance was on the senior level.
No. I mean, again, we have to realize that an Olympic team is 6 people, right? And in Japan's case, they didn't qualify 2. So you went from this 10 weight system to a 6 weight system, and they didn't qualify 2. They had 4 guys that balled out, including like a generational guy in Higuchi. Kyoka is like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Right? And it just
No, it's true. So you think next year Japan?
I don't want to say it's a one-off. I think they got things going there. I think they're doing things right, and I think that they'll have success in the future. But I do think it was lightning in a bottle.
I also saw Kyrgyzstan ran through the world last week. at cadets.
They're good from top to bottom. That's one that you can see. You see Japan do what they did at the Olympics, and you say, well, they're an up and coming program. They must have a great system. I don't know. I haven't seen it at the cadet level, but Kyrgyzstan, not to blow it out of proportion, it's not like Kyrgyzstan balls out at every cadet and junior event. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the numbers that they have, the frequency that they travel, the incremental growth that they have made, their profile keeps rising. Mm-hmm. So I think their future is bright.
Who do you think places top 3 next week in order at Junior Worlds?
In order, I think we take 3rd.
Who's 1 and 2?
Iran, then Russia.
AIN? That AIN country.
That's what I think. I hope that we can beat 1 or 2 of those. I mean, Keter's awesome, and it's like he's already a junior world champ, and he is good enough. If he was heavyweight junior world champ, he's good enough to be a junior world heavyweight champion. It's just Masumi's.
And now with Ben,
it's like Masumi's just otherworldly, right? I mean, he's the same year as Masumi.
Ben is also. This is the first, I think, world championship that he's only focused on wrestling, no football.
Yeah.
So curious at what that does. It's going to be awesome to watch next week. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah. So, it's I will say, like, I would say that Luke has gone silver cadet, gold cadet, silver junior. And so he should be a shoe-in. He should be a shoe-in for a medal, and I think he is. That being said, 57 kilograms. It's a wacky weight, right? There's a lot of parity, and people can pick people off, and it's a little more active than a heavier weight, and so things can happen. I do think Luke has a really good shot. Obviously, silver last year, so I think he's safe. But like. It's hard when you make that jump. Marcus Blaze is in his first year at juniors. Bo is in his first year at juniors, right? So It's tough. D is in his first year. This
is also, there's so many great storylines. I don't know if we'll have time to do a whole show on it, but like even Bo, he's. There's been a lot of talk when he was on the podcast. He talked about wrestling up a weight and feeling really good, and the results kind of showed that. Now I'm curious to see it at the senior level, and how that transfers with not cutting weight and wrestling at a weight he just walks around feeling more comfortable at. It's going to be cool to see where he's at against the world.
Yeah. But it is notoriously, and I have all the confidence in the world in Marcus Blaze and Bo Bassett and D Lockett that and well, even Marisola. Um, but it is notoriously more difficult to win your first year at juniors, right? You get your second crack, you know. That's a little different, but it's a big jump. I'm optimistic, and I think we'll do good enough to get a podium, but I don't know. Some of those Iran and Russia's pretty freaking seasoned.
Yeah. And that was the mistake with Olympic predictions. It wasn't about how good our guys are. It was simply how great the world is. And that seems like what you're talking about right now.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, that's today's show. That was a fun 90-minute show. We'll be cranking shows out because this next month is going to be, we got Junior Worlds and we got World Team Trials. We got the college season around the corner. There's
Who's
no shortage.
Super 32, college preseason. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I did see, we'll plug your Rokfin channel, rokfin.com/Matt Scouts. He just put out this morning Super 32 cheat sheet.
Yeah. So Super 32 entries are available, but it's about 1,000 pages long, and I sort of condensed it all, the main contenders and some of their credentials and stuff, and it's gonna be a good one as always.
Yeah. All right, that's today's show. We'll catch y'all soon.